Imagine this. You wake up one morning in a quiet apartment. The coffee brews in silence. No footsteps from the hallway. No other toothbrush beside yours. Just stillness. Familiar, persistent, and thick like fog. You check your phone. No missed calls. No unread messages. Just the dull glow of your own existence staring back at you. You are free. You can sleep in. You can work late. You can fly across the world tomorrow without explaining a thing. There's no one to argue with about the thermostat, the dishes, or your life plans. It is, by all modern definitions, the dream of independence. And yet, something doesn't feel right. There's a subtle ache under the surface. Not loud but constant, not sharp but heavy. It emerges in the quiet moments, when the movie ends, when the party's over, when you turn off the lights. A question bubbles up from the subconscious. What is this all for? You brush it away. You're just tired. You're focused on your career. You're not ready. But that excuse wears thin over the years, like a rope slowly fraying with the weight it carries. Because you've been single for a long time, and the longer you stay single, the harder it becomes to let someone in. At first it's freedom, then it's habit. Eventually, it becomes armor. But here's the paradox no one talks about. The longer a man is single, the more he may be losing the very thing that makes him capable of love. Not because he's unworthy, not because he's unattractive, but because solitude, unchecked, reshapes the mind, slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly. Like water eroding stone, you start to value peace over growth, control over intimacy, comfort over vulnerability, and maybe without realizing it, you begin to fear the very thing you once longed for. Connection. What once felt like a phase of self-development starts to feel like exile, a quiet banishment from the emotional fabric of life. But no one tells you this. Instead, they tell you to focus on yourself, to build your empire, to grind in silence. And so you do. You lift, you hustle. You read, you save. You plan. But in the mirror, your eyes grow colder. Not cruel, just guarded. And here lies the haunting question. What if independence, when taken too far, becomes its own kind of prison? You begin to question whether this is strength or fear wearing a mask. You wonder whether the walls you built to protect yourself are now keeping love out. You ask yourself, am I becoming someone who prefers solitude because it suits me, or because I've forgotten how to be anything else? Modern society applauds the solitary man. He is disciplined. He is stoic. He is self-reliant. But no one sees the cost. The slow emotional atrophy, the erosion of relational skills, the absence of warmth, spontaneity, and shared laughter. Because no matter how wealthy, successful, or intelligent you become, without connection, life becomes grayscale. But there's another layer, even deeper. What if solitude slowly alters your perception of women, of relationships, of yourself? At first you're selective, then critical, then suspicious. You begin to overthink every interaction, see red flags in places where there were none. You compare real people to imagined ideals. You hold out for perfection, not realizing that the more perfect your solitude becomes, the less space there is for another soul to fit inside. Because perfection isn't inviting, it's isolating. Maybe you tell yourself you're just waiting for the right one. But the truth is, no one can enter a fortress you've sealed shut. And the most tragic part? You may not even notice the gate has closed. So here we are, at the edge of a silent crisis. A man alone, not broken, not desperate, just quietly drifting from the world of love, of touch, of companionship. Slowly forgetting how to be part of another's world. Slowly losing the very language of connection. And no one sees it happening. Because on the outside, everything looks fine. But ask yourself, have you become so good at being alone that you no longer remember how to be with someone? Do you fear love? Not because it might hurt, but because it might change you? Are you truly content, or are you just safe? This is the paradox. The modern man is praised for standing alone, for building himself up, for being unshakable. But maybe, just maybe, he is standing on a shrinking island, and the tide is rising. And here's the final question, the one that echoes in the silence of your own heart. Who are you becoming in your solitude? And is he someone capable of being truly known? The deeper truth lies just beneath the surface. But to find it, you'll need to look at what you've been avoiding, the hidden reason why your prolonged singleness is shaping your mind, your heart, and your fate. Let's go deeper. What if being alone for too long doesn't just change your habits? It rewires your psyche? Imagine your soul as a room. At first, solitude feels like renovating it, tearing down old walls, polishing the floors, repainting the soul with fresh clarity. You fill the space with your books, your routines, your values. You feel alive in the quiet. You feel in control. But over time, the room grows still. The silence that once felt peaceful becomes dense. And eventually, the room is so perfectly arranged, so predictably yours, that any new presence, even a good one, feels like a threat. Not because it is, but because it would mean rearranging everything. This is the hidden problem. Prolonged singleness can lead to spiritual rigidity. You stop adapting. You stop compromising. You stop learning the dance of we, because I is all you've practiced. And slowly, your identity ossifies, not with age, but with the repetition of unchecked independence. Carl Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And this is the crisis. The man who has been alone too long begins to speak a language only he understands. Let's go deeper. Psychologically, the human mind is a pattern-seeking machine. Neural pathways once formed deepen with repetition. Habits, routines, emotional responses, they harden like trails through a forest. The longer you walk them alone, the more difficult it becomes to forge new ones with someone else. Being single too long is not just a lifestyle. It's an ongoing pattern of reward and avoidance. You are rewarded for peace, for certainty, for control. You avoid conflict, messiness, vulnerability. Over time, your brain starts coding connection not as reward, but as risk. It becomes harder to share space, harder to let go, harder to bend. Not because you're selfish, but because you've been the only one holding the map of your life for so long. You fear handing it to another, even if they only want to walk beside you. Now enter Jordan Peterson, who often warns against the perils of male isolation. He argues that meaning is not found in ease, but in responsibility, and that love, at its core, is not just affection, but the burden of caring deeply for another being. The longer a man lives unburdened, the more foreign and even intolerable that kind of meaning begins to feel. Because love costs. It costs your time, your comfort, your sovereignty. And if you've trained yourself to prize those above all else, then love will always feel like a threat instead of a gift. And here's where Friedrich Nietzsche adds a chilling insight. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. But the man who is long single often loses his why, not in a dramatic, existential collapse, but in the slow erosion of purpose beyond the self. When no one depends on you emotionally, when no one shares your future, when no one interrupts your solitude, your life narrows to efficiency, not depth. And efficiency, while productive, is sterile. Let's not mistake productivity for vitality. You can build an empire and still feel empty at the top. You can master your mornings and still dread your nights. You can control every variable of your life and still feel unanchored. Because man was not built to orbit himself. Arthur Schopenhauer, though famously pessimistic, warned of the illusion of complete self-sufficiency. He noted that the pain of existence is not solved by retreat, but by deep engagement, with beauty, with suffering, with others. The long single man often falls into the trap of solving pain with distance, rather than engagement. He becomes an expert in protection, but a novice in connection. This is not strength, it's a seduction, a subtle self-deception that whispers, "You're better off alone." But alone from what? From chaos? From pain? From love? From being seen? Ask yourself, who do you become when no one challenges you emotionally? Who do you become when your life is never interrupted by another's need, vulnerability, or love? The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre famously said, "Hell is other people." But he didn't mean that connection is inherently bad. He meant that to be seen by others, to be known, is deeply uncomfortable. Because it exposes us, it shatters the illusion that we are whole, impenetrable, and perfect. The man who's been single too long often becomes addicted to the illusion of self-perfection. He constructs a life where he is king, but a king without a kingdom, a ruler of a domain no one else inhabits. And here's the painful twist. Every year spent alone makes that domain harder to share. Philosophically, solitude should be a phase of becoming, not a final destination. It should cleanse, clarify, renew. But if it calcifies, if it becomes your identity, then it becomes a spiritual death. One that looks like life on the outside, but leaves the heart untouched, unfelt, unknown. Even Aldous Huxley warned of the dangers of hyper-individualism. In Brave New World, the pursuit of comfort and self-satisfaction leads to emotional emptiness. Love, family, commitment, all seen as threats to the efficient life. But what he was really critiquing was a society where emotional connection was sacrificed on the altar of control. Sound familiar? We live in a culture that worships freedom but forgets its cost. That praises self-love but forgets that love is most tested and most real in relation to others. That tells men to be strong alone, but not how to be strong with someone. And that's the root of the hidden problem. Prolonged singleness is not just a lack of romantic opportunity. It's a deeper, quieter starvation of the soul. The body adapts to hunger. The mind rationalizes isolation, but the soul atrophies. And like a man who hasn't eaten in years, when love finally appears, it feels foreign, even dangerous. So what does this mean for you? It means that solitude, while necessary, must be monitored. That independence must not become a god. That your growth must include others, or it is not complete. And most of all, it means that being single too long is not neutral. It is formative, and you are being formed whether you notice it or not. The deeper question is, are you becoming more human in your solitude, or less? Because the man who forgets how to love may one day meet the person who could have saved him, and not recognize her. You don't feel it at first. There's no dramatic moment, no siren or signpost that warns you. You are drifting too far from others. There's just a slight dulling of emotion, of urgency, of desire, like a man walking into snow with no coat, confident at first, until his limbs go numb and he no longer notices the cold. That's what long-term singleness does to you. Not immediately, not obviously, but insidiously. And the scariest part? It feels normal. It feels earned. It feels safe. But it's not. Let's look at the brain. Neuroscience tells us that humans are social by nature. Connection isn't a luxury. It's a biological need. Studies show that prolonged loneliness affects the brain in the same way as hunger or pain. It activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the region that processes physical suffering. In short, to be alone too long hurts, even if you don't feel the pain consciously. Because you've adapted. You've numbed. And here's the trap. Your adaptation begins to masquerade as strength. You think, I don't need anyone. You think, I'm better off alone. You think I've grown past relationships. But the truth is, you've just forgotten what intimacy feels like. And without realizing it, you begin to see love as inconvenience. You hear friends speak of compromise and you wince. You see others struggle in partnership and you scoff. Why would I sign up for that? Because your reference point is broken. You've trained your brain to associate peace with isolation and intimacy with disruption. And it goes deeper. The longer you're single, the more selective you become, but not in a wise or discerning way. You start chasing an ideal, a fantasy, because no real person can compete with the life you've built in solitude. You begin filtering women through impossible criteria. She must not interrupt your schedule, your habits, your freedom, your peace. And the moment someone evokes emotional complexity or requires you to stretch, you withdraw, not because she's wrong, but because you've forgotten how to bend. This is the unseen consequence. Relational decay masked as personal development. On the surface, you're thriving. Your finances are sharp. Your calendar is full. You look composed, maybe even envied. But underneath, your ability to connect has quietly eroded. Your heart has become a museum, well-kept, admired, but untouched. And slowly, you begin to experience phantom intimacy, a dangerous illusion. This is when you replace real connection with digital substitutes. Porn, dating apps, casual conversations, the curated highlight reels of others. You get the stimulus of connection without the substance of it, and it tricks the brain. Your dopamine receptors fire. You feel wanted, desired, seen, but only for a moment. And then the silence returns, emptier than before, because you were never truly known. Here's the harsh truth. The longer you remain single, the more you risk becoming unfit for the very relationship you one day desire. Not because you're broken, but because you're out of practice. Attachment theory shows us that secure relationships are learned behaviors. They come from being present, responsive, emotionally available. These are muscles. They atrophy when unused. And long-term singleness, for all its freedoms, provides no gym for the soul. No mirror to see your blind spots. No friction to expose your ego. And you need friction. Friction is how love refines. It's how humility grows. It's how selfishness dies.
But if you spend years only orbiting your own needs,
your soul becomes like a blade that's never been sharpened. Pretty, but dull. Let's go further. There is a growing cultural phenomenon, learned independence. It is not true independence born from strength, but a coping mechanism shaped by pain, disappointment, or fear. You start to believe that needing someone is weakness. That dependence is danger. That vulnerability is stupidity. This belief is everywhere. Our culture glorifies the lone wolf, the sigma male, the untouchable, the self-sufficient. But evolution doesn't lie. Our species didn't survive alone. We survived in tribes, in families, in communion. We are built for interdependence. And when you deny that for too long, something sacred within you withers. That sacred thing is your capacity to be moved by someone else's presence, moved by their needs, moved by their tears, laughter, fears, moved enough to change, to soften, to stay. If you're not careful, solitude replaces this with an emotional stoicism that feels empowering but is actually disengagement. Disengagement from risk, from surrender, from the raw, messy beauty of real connection. And then something subtle begins to happen. You start fearing good women, not the toxic ones, not the manipulators, but the genuine, emotionally open, high-integrity women. Why? Because they see through you. They sense the emotional walls. They feel the guardedness. They spot the absence of depth. And if they challenge you to open, you retreat. Because you no longer know how. You fear being exposed as someone emotionally underdeveloped, someone who looks whole, but has been untouched by love for years. And so you either chase fantasy or settle for surface, never diving deep. It's not conscious. It's not evil. It's just habit. Cognitive biases kick in. You seek confirmation that staying single is safer. You notice every failed relationship around you and use it as proof. You become a master of defensive rationalization, a brilliant lawyer arguing for a case. You don't even want to win, because deep down you want love. You crave the shared silence of someone who knows your soul, the warmth of a hand that feels like home, the wild safety of being seen and chosen, not for your image, but your essence. But to receive that, you must become fit for it. And that fitness requires practice. It requires unlearning self-protective reflexes. It requires softening the edges that independence has hardened. It requires asking yourself not, what can I get from love? But who do I need to become to give it? This is the greatest unseen consequence, that the longer you wait to love, the harder it becomes to remember how. And one day, when the perfect person walks in, not flawless, but perfect for you, you may be too numb to feel it, too critical to see it, too rigid to receive it. And the tragedy is not that you were single, it's that you forgot how to stop being. But what if there was a way back? A way to reverse the erosion, to reignite your emotional vitality, to reclaim the parts of you that solitude buried? What if the truth you've avoided could become the very key to your redemption? Let's go there next. You can feel it now, can't you? That quiet ache, that echo in your chest that success doesn't silence, that stillness in the night that no amount of self-improvement drowns out. It's been building, slowly, subtly, like pressure beneath the surface. You've lived so long inside your own world that you began to believe it was the whole world. But it wasn't. And here is the truth, the one that strips away every excuse, every rationalization, every illusion. Solitude was never supposed to be your identity. It was supposed to be your preparation. You were never meant to remain untouched. The man you've become in your solitude is not meant to be the final form, but the foundation. The longer you are single, the more dangerous it becomes, not because you're unloved, but because you start to believe you are unlovable in your wholeness. You hide behind peace because peace doesn't demand exposure. You hide behind freedom because freedom doesn't ask you to share. But the soul does not grow in a vacuum. It grows in contact, in contradiction, in conflict, in communion. Love isn't an accessory to life. It is the crucible of transformation. And this is the truth you've perhaps been avoiding. You are not complete until you've been reshaped by love. Real love, not the polished ideal, not the filtered fantasy, but the messy, flawed, inconvenient, soul-stretching reality of being seen, fully, and still chosen. You think you've grown because you're in control, because you don't need anyone, because you've mastered your time, your habits, your mind. But what if true growth is in the surrender? What if the final test is not what you can build alone, but who you can become with another? You see, it's easy to be disciplined in solitude. Easy to look spiritual when unchallenged. Easy to feel wise when no one is pushing against your ego. But relationships are the forge, and love, true love, is fire. It burns away the mask. It sears off the performance. It shows you the places you've kept hidden, even from yourself. That is its power, and its gift. Because the man who emerges from that fire is not just better, he is real. This is the ultimate truth. The man who stays single too long risks becoming a ghost in his own life, present but not participating, visible but not vulnerable, known but never truly felt. He may move through the world with confidence, but it is hollow. He may speak with intelligence, but it lacks soul. He may touch others, but not deeply, because part of him is sealed off. Preserved for a love he's forgotten how to welcome, but it's not too late. That's the grace in all this. No matter how long you've been alone, no matter how deep the habits or how cold the heart, you can choose to come back. Not to your past, not to desperation, but to life, to risk, to love. You start by admitting the cost, by feeling the sorrow of what your solitude has stolen from you, by grieving the years spent strong and untouched, disciplined and untouched, admired and untouched. You were never meant to be untouched. You were meant to be moved, and that requires a terrifying act. Opening the door, lowering the drawbridge, letting someone in, not just into your plans, but into your essence, not just into your arms, but into your wounds, your chaos, your unknown. That is love, not rescue, not completion, but reflection, the mirror that shows you both the glory and the grime, and offers you the chance to grow beyond what solitude can teach. Because there are things you will never know about yourself until someone else loves you. There are corners of your soul that only intimacy can light. There are strengths you'll never unlock until they're needed by someone else. There are depths you'll never reach until you've dared to swim in the unknown waters of another human being. You think you've built yourself, but what if your greatest self is only revealed in love? That's not weakness. That's initiation. The truth is, love isn't the thing that interrupts your life. It's the thing that fulfills it. It's the axis upon which all your becoming must turn. Your discipline? Strengthened by love. Your purpose? Sharpened by love. Your wounds? Healed by love. Your legacy? Carried forward by love. So now you face the question that matters most. Are you ready to stop performing strength and start practicing love? Because that's where life begins. Not in your victories, but in your surrender. Not in your control, but in your vulnerability. Not in your solitude, but in your return. Return to the messy middle, to the fragile beauty of being known, to the terrifying, glorious, soul-breaking work of giving yourself away. This is not for everyone. Many will choose the illusion, the peace without passion, the comfort without commitment, the self without sacrifice. But if you're still reading, maybe you won't. Maybe you feel it now. That pulse, that tug, that ache to remember what it's like to not be alone inside your own life. You don't need to rush. You don't need to panic. But you do need to decide. Because love doesn't wait forever. And the longer you delay, the harder it becomes to hear its call. But if you do hear it, if you feel it even faintly, follow it. Let it hurt. Let it change you. Let it undo everything you built in your solitude, so that something deeper, truer, more eternal can be born in its place. The man who has loved and lost is still more alive than the man who has never dared to love at all. So go, not in desperation, but in readiness, not to be saved, but to offer, not to find perfection, but to practice presence. Because the ultimate truth is this: love is not the end of your freedom. It is the beginning of your fulfillment. Sit with that. Let it work on you. Let it open something. And when you're ready, step into the fire, because that's where you'll finally meet the man you were always meant to become.